Lamar Jackson signed a $260 million contract in the 2023 offseason on draft night. Is he really worth that $52 million per year average? We discuss next on the GM. Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy Boulanger up next on the GM. While Lamar Jackson's contract is the best valued in the NFL, do me a quick favor, hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. So, as we're getting geared up for the 2024 off season, we're going to have the combine, we're going to have free agency, and then we'll have the actual draft. And of course, you guys know that we've started a series called Getting Real about the Ravens, and we're going to be assessing all things Ravens. And we're going to be taking a look at our free agents and the ones we need to bring in. And part of free agency, probably the biggest part of free agency, is money. Do you have the money to resign your free agents? And who can you add to your roster? And that requires money. So when we start looking at free agents, we're going to be looking at contracts. And one big contract that I want to talk about, because a lot of people in Ravens Nation, outside of Ravens Nation, questioned, was Lamar Jackson worth that 5 year, $260 million deal? I remember distinctly before he signed his contract or agreed to a contract on draft night, I remember tons of people saying, trade him, he's not worth it, move on, get the 2 first round draft picks, all those kind of things. And I guess at that point, things had got so desperate, we just wanted a decision to be made. And the decision that was made was a 5 year, 260 deal, which kind of averages out at about $52 million a year. And no matter what you think about the contract, I'm here to tell you that it's probably one of, if not the best values in the entire league. Now, I know you may be wondering, Belanger, what are you up to now? Well, you guys know that when I do content, I'm not normal to most Ravens content creators or football content creators. Not because I want to be abnormal, I just want to have conversation, right? I want to have sports conversation. So that's why I make videos with the content that I make it. But let's give consideration to Lamar Jackson, okay? And the reason why I say his contract is the best value or valued in the league is this, because he's actually asked to do quarterback at a high level, and let's just be honest, running back at a high level. Ah, Belanger, here you go. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. When your quarterback runs 148 times a season, that's in that second or third running back category. And on average, up until this season, Lamar has probably averaged, if I remember correctly, because I did a video on it, about 170 plus carries per season. So he's a little down this year at 148. And so that gets into that 170 carries, that gets into second running back status. But the truth of it is, he's the number one running back. So let's talk about the contract. If the Baltimore Ravens have almost made it a requirement that he lead them in rushing based on what we're doing offensively, then we have to consider, where does Lamar rank as a team's number one running back? Well, I'm glad you asked that. So when we look at the top three quarterbacks in the league based on salary, you have Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Jonathan Taylor. McCaffrey makes a little over 16, Kamara 15, and Jonathan Taylor 14. When you average that out, that's 15 million for your top running backs in the league. All right. When you look at the second three, right, their salary averages out at $11 million. And then when you look at the bottom three or four, their salaries average out at 10 million, right? So when you take into consideration, when you put all three together, 15, 11, and 10, you're going to come out with 36 million, which when you divide it by three, you're looking at basically $13 million per year for your top 10 running backs in the league and a team's number one running back. So we have to literally kind of take and assess that $13 million of Lamar Jackson's contract is to be the number one running back. And I know this is kind of getting over in the mud a little bit, but I'm really wanting to kind of express the value we get out of Lamar Jackson. And so when people start saying trade him, he's not worth it, well, hold it. You have to pay him in consideration like a top running back. Why? Because that's what's been asked of him thus far in his career. Okay. When you look at his running backs, the guys he's going to turn around and hand it to, you had an older Mark Ingram. Then you had a basically second year guy in J.K. Dobbins who ended up getting hurt repeatedly. Then you turn to the 27 and 28-year-old Gus Edwards, who is a good back, but not really a number one back. And then you looked at some other supplemental parts. And so when you look at it, he outrushed Gus Edwards by almost 200 yards this season. Um, and so he is the number one running back. Do we want our quarterback to remain the number one running back for the team? No, we do not. We do not want that. Why? Because that's double duty. And anytime you're doing two jobs, right, you can't become greater at the one. All right. Which will lean into the next video in the Getting Real About the Ravens series. It'll be about Lamar Jackson's improvement. So, but let's not stop there. Let's not stop in the context of he's our number one running back, so he should be paid around $13 million, which would then make his salary $39 million for playing quarterback, which puts him right there at Daniel Jones. I mean, if we really just do the math. But why should he be thought about as one of the top 10 running backs? Well, I'm glad you asked. When we do the comparison, his 821 yards puts him down at number 22 uh, of all the rushers this season. Okay. But when you think about the 60 guys who may have had 100 carries or more, you have to consider Lamar Jackson as a top 25 rusher. But let's go deeper than that. His 5.5 yards per carry average is the highest of all the guys above him. That will include McCaffrey. That will include guys like Alvin Kamara. That will include guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, um, Aaron Jones, and all the other guys who have more rushing yards. He has a high per carry average. He has the highest, okay, please hear me. He has a average of 30% first downs when he rushes the ball. Actually, it's 32.4, which is what? The highest of all the running backs above him, including a dark horse MVP in Christian McCaffrey. Okay? He had 5 rushing touchdowns this year. That means when you look at everybody who finished above him on the running back list, that tied him or put him above 7 guys who finished above him on the running back list. So when you look at what he's doing with the ball in his hand, just from a running perspective, you got to remember every other guy who is a true running back, right? When a play is called, everybody on offense knows that it's a running play, which means all 5 offensive line, tight end, wide receiver, fullback, if he's in the game, All of those guys know to block because it's a run. But when Lamar Jackson runs the ball outside of a called run, a scramble, he has to find open space in order to be as effective and efficient with what he does running the ball. So when you really kind of take into consideration that he's led the Baltimore Ravens in rushing 5 of 6 years. When you take into consideration he's number 22 in the league in 2023 in overall rush yards, when you take into consideration that he has the highest per carry average of all the guys above him on the true running back list, when you take into consideration he has the highest first down average when he rushes the ball of all the guys above the list, above him on the list, excuse me. When you take into consideration his 5 touchdowns ties or exceeds 7 guys who finished above him on the list who have no less than 30 more carries. You have to put him in that top 10 running back category, especially when it comes to salary. So now, when you take into consideration, okay, stay with me, his overall value as a running back or as a runner, that's worth about $13 million. And therefore, as a quarterback, that's worth about 39 million. So when we really kind of give consideration to that $39 million salary, then what we're looking at is a Daniel Jones, 4 years and 160. So what does that mean? It really kind of means we're getting a 2-for-1 in Lamar Jackson. We're getting a top 3 quarterback and we're getting the top 10 runner, right? And so the reason why I'm doing this assessment as I get ready to start talking about free agency is because we're going to talk about what I call a dead contract. A dead contract is a contract that you no longer get value out of in context of what you paid for it, right? And a lot of people thought or believed that Lamar Jackson's contract was dead on arrival, meaning the Baltimore Ravens overpaid for him, meaning that the Baltimore Ravens should have taken the 2 first-round picks and let him move on. But when you really look at what he has done, what he was asked to do this year, and what he will probably have to do in 2024, it's really the best valued contract in the entire league based on what he has to do to win. Now, the big question is, what would Lamar Jackson's value be? How much better would he be if the Baltimore Ravens really filled out this roster and stopped trying to build it on top of him and build it around him? What would we look like if we went out and got one of these top running backs? Not necessarily in the draft. I think we should draft a running back, but I'm talking about one of these top guys who are on the free agency market. What would that look like for us and Lamar Jackson? What would that look like? Maybe we don't go get the top of the line Mike Evans, but what if we get one of those second tier guys who could come in and offer some great uh, value to our offense? What would that look like if we stop bargain shopping for offensive pieces and we start going to get real valuable proven commodities to put around this guy? How much better? Think about this. When he's been playing with supplemental parts, and that's even this year, right? Because I know that Zay was great, but I never add in a rookie in his first year because you never know what you're going to get from him, right? But when you add in all the other pieces that he had to work with at wide receiver, those are what you call supplemental parts, including Odell Beckham. When you look at the running back room, those were supplemental parts, including Gus Edwards, who was probably the number 1 rusher, right? Granted, even when J.K. Dobbins was there, J.K. Dobbins could only be a supplemental part simply because we don't really know or did not really know what J.K. Dobbins could fully be because we have not seen him fully healthy. So I'm just saying, what if we just go get a couple of proven guys, a proven running back and and a proven wide receiver? What could this offense really be? What could Lamar Jackson really become if we lighten his load? Is that asking for too much? Ravens Nation, is that asking for too much to lighten his load? That's what all the other 31 other teams do for their quarterbacks. At least that's what they should be doing. They should be trying to lighten their load. Well, how do you do that? You don't do that by drafting. You do that by going to get some guys to lighten that load around him. Why? Why not draft versus a proven guy? Simply because a proven guy, you know what you're getting when they walk in the door. A draft pick, you're basing it on potential, right? And so I think it's now time. It's now time to go and build out this roster around Lamar Jackson, and let's really see what we can become because it is the best valued contract in the league, no matter how you cut it and how you slice it. See, this is not a conversation of best quarterback. This is not a conversation of what tier is he on. He's a top three guy, but I'm not measuring him versus the other dudes, right? This is just talking about value. You see, value is assessed by what you get out of something in concert with what you had to give up to get it. And what Lamar Jackson has to do from the quarterback position, being a an above average to elite passer with the ball, and also being the number one runner for this team, that's called value. So listen, man, please stay tuned to the Getting Real About the Ravens series, man. Got a lot of more good content to come. We're going to be talking about free agency. We're going to be talking about contracts, and I guarantee you're going to be surprised with some of the things that I say in the free agency conversation. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM. We're out.